Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Arwin, Chocolate Saiyan, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yo, good morning.
I could have sworn Neil was here, but obviously not. Hello, everyone in Discord.
Everyone.
Very enthusiastic.
Hey.
Hello, good to have you all. Hello, Adam.
Afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Right,
Adam?
I think we're going
All
to
right.
hopefully carry on with the conversation if it doesn't get completely disturbed in terms of flow by the housekeeping questions, in terms of baller motivations, because it's sort of spilled over from yesterday's show. And I just think it's an interesting subject. So we are going to rattle our way to hopefully it doesn't completely disturb the flow from the pre-show. Anyway, any evidence of a physical, geometric sphere edge, horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
I never claimed that. They never claimed it, but they have to gain our trust in order to just talk about it again. But they never claimed it, though.
I thought they did at one point. They called Earth curve.
It's
No,
absolutely the
No, but
cornerstone
they
of
say
the...
they don't now, so they have never claimed it.
For clarity, but trench levels that come to the debate now say words to the effect of, or to quote Tim Osman, nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve. However, that is the cornerstone of the claim that the Earth is a sphere. Now, we have defeated the argument with the Black Swan, and their rebuttal is to say, well, no one's claiming the horizon's Earth curve. Meanwhile, Earth curve maths saying this sphere edge is getting in the way of boats and buildings. That's the horizon. That's your Earth curve. Yes, you are saying that. It's just been demolished. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
None whatsoever. And as we discussed on the pre-show, even when navigators use that beautiful tool called the sextant, they have to assume the Earth is stationary and the stars are moving. So go figure that one out, boys.
Well, the clouds are moving really fast in one direction today. So maybe now the atmosphere is more as it is, so that the Coriolis effect of the Earth spinning underneath is finally revealing itself.
Yeah, but you said the clouds are moving.
Yeah, because the Earth would be spinning underneath.
Really? How's that
If the Earth were spinning.
work?
Now, I'm just suggesting that now it happens to be, the wind happens to be blowing very persistently and quickly in one direction. So maybe now the Earth curvature, the Earth spin is revealing itself more as is, right? Just
How
like-
was it yesterday? Was it calm yesterday?
No, it was also blowing.
Well, was it calm ever where you live?
Yeah, well, during the summer it was kind of nice.
So is the Earth stopped then in the summer for you?
Well, or the air just decided to move more in lockstep with the Earth during that period.
Oh, so if the Earth is moving, what else would show us Coriolis?
Well, everything that would be in the air
Like a
would
drone?
probably now drift with the wind.
Like a drone?
Yeah.
Okay, how come we don't see that?
Well, if you put up a drone right here outside, you would absolutely see it drift. I guarantee it.
Today, because it's windy, right?
Right, because now you can see the Earth spin for more as it is. Right?
You're a fun baller to talk to, Arlen.
I know, because I actually am proficient at it and not just fooling around.
All right, I'm going to attempt to read out what a chat participant and member, Desmond Hume, has said, right? I'm going to try and read it. The horizon is refraction of the ocean blue in open sky, the firmament above. Psychophysical surveillite, if I've said that right, is a rare induction coaxial ether torsion perturbation. Oh my god. I can't even read this. So many words that I don't.
Modalities.
Modalities, radiation, high energy, quasi matter, gamma radiation, EMR, 0-point hard light. That's the most beautifully and convoluted string of nonsense I've ever heard, David Hume. I'm sure
That's technobabble poetry right there.
it's just. I hope that hasn't actually got any sentiment of meaning behind it, because if so, that's gonna be really insulting what I've just said. But hopefully not, because it was just beautifully nonsensical in every respect.
Oh, I like the coaxial ether torsion part.
That's the bit that caught my attention. I thought I'll read that out. Brilliant. If he's really offended and stops being a member as a result, I'm so sorry. I'll take it all back and say the complete opposite, just because I'm a complete whore. Anyway, moving on. We just had axial rotation. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Hey, but I just presented proof.
Of distance to the sun?
No, axial rotation.
He didn't. You
Gentleman
assumed the Earth
asked,
was
so
spinning
what
at the
about that
beginning.
drone you let up in the air? And I said, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's going to spin with the Earth.
With the Earth that's spinning, yeah. I might not have been paying that close attention, but I did definitely notice that right at the start, you know the tactic of beg the question immediately with the first statement, because then if it's objected to, you can object based on the fact that your opponent's immediately interrupted you. So generally speaking, that's the tactic they'll use. Beg the question immediately. In your case, you said if the Earth's rotating. That was the first words out your mouth before your rather... No, it's not be insulting. Your example and discussion with 10th Man then followed. But you begged the question initially.
Oh, damn it. Thought I was going to get away with it.
All I'm doing is listening out for that. So while it's obviously their defense tactic to say, oh, Nathan talked over people. Yeah, I do when they beg the question immediately. Now, that might seem unreasonable, but I don't care. Because the argument is the argument. And upon defeat, I'm going to point it out immediately. I'm not going to hang around for a load of hyperbole. Just because I know you begged the question. Now, in this instance, we're just chatting back and forth, right? But that doesn't mean that at the end of it, you can claim victory, thinking I've not spotted that you begged the question immediately. I still spotted it.
Hey, if there's nobody to tell me, I win.
That's true.
That's how it works.
Well, that is how it works. Annoying as it may be, that is the case. If no one's there at the end, normally people would... I'm not saying I'm some brilliant person without a pen and paper, but generally speaking, if you've got a pen and paper and you're taking notes on it, and you write it down, first thing that you'll write down is they beg the question immediately. Now, if you're so reasonable as to let the hyperbole slide for 5 or 6 minutes, the first thing you should do upon rebuttal is point out they're begging the question fallacy immediately. You know, so if it goes unaddressed, well, yeah, then you've begged the question, given a load of hyperbole, which is what people will pay attention to. Most likely the last statement that comes out your mouth, which will be in conclusion. Not noticing that you begged the question in first assumption, first statement, first words out your mouth, because they've forgotten already.
That's part of the trick. It's all about the story left behind in people's mind.
Exactly. Slip the logical fallacy in before anyone notices. Go on, sorry, Adam.
I'm saying I'm starting to light ball in. You're very good at it, Owen, because I actually can't see your face, but you don't sound like, when I'm trying it, like you're smirking. You actually sound like you're believing it in that moment. You're fully in the ball. It's... you're more. I think you're more of an adversary than most ballers at it, mate.
Right. Well, I used to be one, and I've just arrived in a position where I can't defend it anymore with actual reason, but I still sympathize a lot with the struggle you're stuck in when you believe that.
Don't give me that crap. You just know how they do their tactics and you just employ them.
Well, I try to minimize that, still keep it somewhat eloquent, because the ballers now are just getting so desperate and savage that they just scattergun you with like the worst things ever, the most nonsense. I don't go there because I'm not that effectively that desperate. I don't feel like just because the ball earth has been absolutely disproven in every possible conceivable way doesn't mean that it's the end of the ball. So I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's not real. It's still going to persist anyway. So there will be things to talk about, things that people will think and dream about it, whether it is real or not.
You have so much.
Temp.
Okay, yeah, I'll just finish. You have so much sympathy and empathy. Your new name's going to be Arwen Nightingale.
What? I don't get it.
Florence Nightingale, always helping people. Here
I've
you
seen-
are, Arwen Nightingale for the
I've seen
ballers.
Arwen rage at these ballers and get very frustrated with them, right? So this feigning empathy that he's doing is merely him masking the fact that he's recognised the weapons on the battlefield, picked them up, and can use them. Now, the reality is, while it seems very negative, is that Arwen can use those weapons in both directions. At the moment, he's just playing baller shooting their weapons back at us like they would. Well, that doesn't mean to say that he can't turn them on his opponent and then realise how the weapon works and just dismantle the weapon in front of the opponent's eyes, which is what Arwen can also do. But like with any good debater, you've got to know your opponent's argument, and knowing your opponent's argument means being able to put it up against someone else and win. And Arwen could definitely do that. But that doesn't mean he's got some underlying empathy for these people. And I know it's not even true. I watch your show.
Well, maybe I do have a bit of an underlying
This-
empathy.
My point, Arwen, I think secretly you want to be the best baller arguer out there, even though you don't believe it yourself.
Well,
I think you're
secretly-
developing the skills. If you listen to you arguing,
Yes.
you are a tricky little baller when you do it.
well, you're right.
Tricksy.
You're a terrorist sympathizer.
What?
That's not- no, that's wrong.
Thing, you've got to fully comprehend it both ways to be able to do that. And it's a bit like the rumpus. You've got. I give him kudos. He does know it inside out to be able to flip flap like he does. And
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. It's just that, in a way, I think that the ball earth and all of this is an interesting game. I just really like the game. I don't, just because I figured out, oh, it's just a game, doesn't mean I just want to throw it in the garbage can immediately. Then again, all these people trying to reify it back into reality, that's where things get a little frustrating and annoying, and all the bad behavior starts to pop up, and the religious indoctrination effects and all that, right? But as a concept, I learned to appreciate it really well. It's almost like I was so good at playing with it as a kid, so good at imagining it and translating the ideas. It's like I can't throw it away. It's like I was too good at it to throw it away completely. But I'm not going to fool myself into it being the actual reality anymore, though. Not really. I'm not going to go there anymore. I can't.
Not
I've
really.
learned too
What
much
do you mean, not
about it.
really? You sound like you're saying you shouldn't, and I won't. Like some drug addict, I will never do it again. What do you mean? I wouldn't interject it until you phrased it that way.
What? Just-
Well,
It's like a
no,
pair
I'm
of
being
old blue
serious.
jeans with a bunch of holes. You just can't get rid of it.
I don't want to throw it away, but I'm not going to believe it to be actual reality anymore. It's just a really cool game.
A little bit of crack's okay. I'm not going to throw the crack pipe away. It's just a game. It's just a bit of fun.
Crack pipe? No, but I'm not smoking that.
I'm using it by analogy to the globe, and it sounds like you've got a mild addiction to it.
Well, playing around with it, yeah.
Red globe.
Well,
A virtual globe, the globe
No
in
one's-
our minds.
Arwen's just given 10 minutes disclaimer about how he doesn't reify it, so I'm not going to claim that's the case. But like somebody who gets too immersed in a role-playing game, right, online or on a board or whatever, right, sometimes it can be unhealthy. Now, I'm not even suggesting that's the case with Arwen, but again, in this regard, there's going to be plenty of people who will immediately empathise with Arwen in this regard and go, yeah, I know it's not real, but... Like, this is a nice segue, actually. Maybe we're again going to go housekeeping for this. But maybe that's one of the things that people will be reluctant to actually disclaim their understanding about the nature of reality, because societally it's frowned upon.
You mean publicly?
Yeah,
If
I
you
mean,
go
generally.
against it, then right. But this seems to be much more of a social understanding, like the way of communicating with one another, not so much an internal monologue. Right? It's like not done to start going against the globe, to pop that bubble, to break that spell in public, like a social effect, rather than somebody's internal figuring out what reality is. You know?
Not everyone has that. That was something that JLB pointed out a few months back, that I was like, I wonder if that's true. I'll ask a few people and see what they say. And he turned out to be right. Based on a very limited, research group on my part, but by the same token, he generally presents his own research data to show why he's come to the conclusions he has. But sorry, just so people know what I'm talking about, not everyone has an internal dialogue. And if you're unaware what an internal dialogue it is, as follows: pretend for a moment that what you're about to hear when I give a signal to that effect isn't what's coming out of my lips. It's what's going on inside my head when nobody's actually around and I'm just having a discussion internally. So from this moment forth, it'll only be my internal dialogue, just verbalized. I wonder if that stressless chair will ever come up second-hand in black leather. I really do want it. This chair is so uncomfortable. But should I buy it? Well, it is an expensive chair. Well, it would help your work, technically speaking, because you'd be more comfortable. That's an internal dialogue. Okay? Now, there are considerably more important things that people will have discussions about internally than whether or not they're comfortable in the chair they're sat, which I'm not. I just thought I'd throw that in. Anyway, people will discuss things like the nature of reality internally. They will assess their cognitive processing. So, for example, if you hold two positions at the same time, i.e. Earth has an edge that's blocking things in the distance calculable in Earth curve maths, it simultaneously cannot be measured, cannot be seen, wouldn't be expected to seen. You can have that as an internal dialogue. Well, why would it be the case that both positions hold true? Well, only one can hold true. Well, which one holds true? Well, which one's got the logic behind it? Which one takes its position and then destroys it? You'd have that as an internal dialogue. However, some people do not. Some people do not have an internal dialogue.
That's so interesting.
It's so
That
weird.
baffled me,
I've
that.
heard it, but I
Someone
can't
also
imagine
told
it really,
the-
because the internal dialogue has always been like it's my second life from very, very young on. I had an internal monologue or dialogue before I probably learned to even verbally communicate, as far as I can remember.
Well,
But apparently it is so.
Go on, someone's trying to get a word in.
the-
Who's trying to add something? Go ahead, whoever that was.
Eli.
Go ahead, Eli.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was talking to someone a few months ago, and they were telling me that people can't imagine. Like, not, there's some people that can't imagine like motion picture in their mind, and I was like, get the hell out of here. He's like, no, no, no. They don't have the ability to make pictures when they're hearing people speak to them in their mind. I was like, that can't be a thing. But just like you said, I started asking, around, and it turns out that that is the case for some people. So it's like, how do you even put things together if you can't? I don't even get that.
Well, here's where it joins to the subject matter, because people are presented with plenty of information so that they don't have to do that. So that those blanks, if they were ever to be internally verbalized, have an internal dialogue about them, well, that isn't necessitated if it's already been resolved mentally. It's just stuck in the back recesses of your mind and never to be concerned about again. Concerned, right? Well, they don't want necessarily people concerning themselves with people that they aren't being educated in or following a narrative on, and therefore just present the answer on the Discovery Channel to most people. And rather than them having a little internal dialogue while they're sat down reading a book and pondering for a moment, if they're permanently engrossed with the TV and what it's telling them, the TV replaces the internal dialogue, right? It tells them what to think and how to think it, what to be scared of, what to be happy about, what to rejoice, what to clap about. Kid you not. So the internal dialogue can be replaced very easily.
Yeah, it usually is, and we run into it on many different subjects, don't we?
But it's one of those that the consideration of the internal dialogue, when I think back to when do you become acutely aware of it? And you think, well, I remember somebody talking about on a movie about them talking to their microwave, or it was on a TV show or something about that. And they were discussing it with a fellow character and assessing whether or not they were nuts. It was extremely frowned upon. You know, this person was portrayed as a bit kooky because they had a conversation with their microwave. Now, what I realised at that moment when I heard that was, well, I do that. Am I a bit nuts? In other words, they're programming about, well, that makes you a bit nuts if you're just assessing things and verbalising them internally. Well, that makes you a bit kooky. It's like the fact that they've turned it into them talking to a microwave or talking to a wall. It's like, no, they're not actually talking to the microwave. They're just talking to themselves. Or, you know, the imaginary third person. It's not a figure or an entity to be reified. It's just you discussing something with yourself. But that was, like I say, very, very, very frowned upon.
I did that regularly, Nathan. I still do talk to myself all the time. At uni, the guys would be going, who's in there with you? And I would just be working stuff out. But often you do have that internal, but on more complex stuff, so you do verbalise it yourself just to work through stuff. Well, I did. I do. If you know what I mean. It's
absolutely
to I think, as Elijah was saying, and I, because this is one of these vids you've sent us, so I'd looked at it, and to even comprehend that people don't think like that is weirder for me. And there is a point, I think, to link it back to what you're saying, there is that point where that is slightly tweaked as a little bit odd, actually. And I think the reason is exactly what you allude to, is they don't want you having your own internal. They want to feed you that internal monologue via the systems, the TV, the media, etc. And it is quite a government ploy. If you can derive an internal monologue or add to it, you have control over the masses. Because, as you say, you're making those decisions for them. You're giving them the answer, so they don't have to think. They don't. It's already done. And even those that do have internal monologue are still subject to these effects.
Right on.
Well,
Go on, Elijah.
what if it's the big speculation coming? What if it's the case that we're the few that can have this internal dialogue in the way that, you know, it's as detailed as like I can have a very extensive conversation with myself. Like, what if that's really not the case for everyone? Like, what would that mean? Does that mean that they're like NPCs? Like, you know, it's like that's where I was going with
Well,
it.
I'll tell you what it means. It means they're easy to keep under control. That's very, you know, to take advantage of that fact that people are fickle, they've got a short attention span, or they don't necessarily have an internal dialogue. That might be a generalization about the society we live in as opposed to people in general. What I'm saying is that I'm sure people have the potential to have an internal dialogue, but it's just often replaced with other things that distract them. And in many instances, that's what's presented on a TV screen. And the narratives that are presented inside that little gobble box that you're watching, well, that kind of replaces your internal dialogue. There's things constantly being talked about, discussed, reified from that particular media, and you don't have to give any of the things that are being discussed much consideration. You're asked to do very little in that regard, and you've got very little input or effect on what's actually transpiring. Whereas if you turn to your own internal dialogue, you know, things you can have an effect on can be, you know, mentally gone through. The way I picture it, right, because I got in trouble for this once at work. I was an estate agent, and you presented with all these clients that you've got to call, and you presented with all these buildings that you need to flog. And what I was doing, I remember very distinctly, sat at the desk thinking about who I could call about a house and how I would have the conversation with them. And while I'm doing this is an internal dialogue. The manager taps me on the shoulder and he says, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Working." He's like, "You're not doing anything." I'm like, "I am. I'm figuring out what I'm going to say to the next client about this house." He's like, "Just phone them." I'm like, well, phone them and do what? I've got to internally rehearse what I'm going to say to them, where the conversation might go. In other words, often, same in debate, right? Prior to now, I don't often, if ever, do this anymore. But, you know, going back a couple of years, you'd be in the shower and you'd be like, hypothetically, if this conversation or this debate topic came up, how would I have a conversation or debate about it? And therefore, you've got to not only have the conversation, you've got to play the opponent internally and perceive what they might put back at you so you can rebut it. This is all while you're having a scrub in the shower, you know. You're going back and forth with somebody. Now, I don't verbalise that because otherwise you do sound nuts if you actually, you know, someone walks in on you and wife comes in to use the loo and suddenly you hear a two-way conversation with one person. That does actually sound a bit bonkers. Or does it? Is that just the programming that I've been subject to when the media says that makes you a bit bonkers? If you actually open your mouth and have this internal dialogue, maybe it'd be really useful to the people around you for you to hear you verbalising the internal dialogue that you're having at that particular moment. Maybe it would benefit them greatly. But no, why are you having two parts of a conversation? Well, I'm trying to figure out. I'm doing it right now. I'm expressing an internal dialogue right now, playing the third person. Anyway, I'll shut up.
We did that in sales training.
Sometimes it ends up actually being a better conversation, depending on the person you're talking to.
Well,
Yeah.
we used to do that in sales training, practice, drill, rehearse each appointment, know all the objections. We had listed 100 top objections, and I would go throughout the sales force and say, how would you answer this if a client said this about your product? And we would just drill it to where it became second nature.
Yeah, and that process has got to start somewhere with someone who can put pen to paper and come up with conceivable objections and things like that, and come up with plausible agreement ladders that you could put to those objections. That'll take somebody with a bit of comprehension to actually internally, you know, verbalise what's going to take place, so they can draw out a flow chart, whatever you need to do. But that requires some some mental capacity that often the people it's being disseminated to just do not have. Now, this is going to, like I say, go on.
No, I was going to say I do want to add a comment to the microwave thing after you're done.
I'm done. I'm just trying to encourage this conversation so we can eventually link it back to the indoctrination and how people are easily, what's the word? Well, indoctrinated by way of replacing an internal dialogue. This is a very loose connection to the two things, and Adam will appreciate this, hopefully, given the amount of information I've been sending him recently, so that you can see where I'm going with this. I just haven't tied it all together yet enough to make it coherent, but is Adam still there? Probably not. Go on.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, when you were talking, I was saying, well, this microwave example needs context. So in my mind, I was saying, okay, so in context, people talking to microwave, that only lasts seconds. You got to worry about the people who are talking to their ovens.
Very good. That's a joke as opposed to a pun. It's been a while. Shout out to Unitox Femi. Yeah, it is, Neil. Quick shout out to Unitox Femu. If someone lies, it isn't because of hiding truth. Okay. Thanks for the super chat. So, yeah.
Smash that super chat.
Yeah,
Nathan needs a new chair.
I've actually had some good news about that in terms of generating, I'm not going to call it an income, but certainly something. But we'll come to that as a side subject. Might even get discussed in the after show. Till it gets implemented, that is. Then I'll plug the hell out of it. Anyway, we were talking about the psychology of being brainwashed into being a baller. Yesterday it was about the benefits of actually being one when they come here with their cognitive dissonance. What's the benefit of fighting for your cause? What does it give you in the end, other than a bit more social acceptance, therefore less concern with the status quo that you're bucking if you in any way verbalise your reality appreciation?
There is no benefit.
Well, unless you find that you start having an internal dialogue about it and it sends you crazy, and you're like, I don't want to be considering these things. It would be much better if I just didn't have the opposing view. Who gave me that opposing view? I'm going to go and tell them they're an idiot. That'll make me feel much better.
Well, the whole adage of why people do things is change is very difficult for people. So people change because they either want to or circumstances are such to where they have to. So a lot of people don't change, then all the bad decisions previously to that condition now is forcing them to change because they have to. Or you could have just decided earlier, I want to change. So with the ballers, if I translate that statement, it's like they're comfortable being ballers and they don't want to change. But then eventually, after listening to shows and see their ball get ripped apart, they're every day in every show, they're forced to have to defend it. So they're in a bad position, actually.
Most of them don't even know what's going on. Like I've shared before, my cousin's a school teacher. But if she would just listen, just want to listen to one show, I think she would start to at least entertain it.
We're mainly talking about the trenchers here, though, not the normies.
I was on mute. Yeah, exactly. Why would they not care? In other words, just get on with their lives.
When I start speaking flatter to academia.
Sorry, the middle of my sentence interrupted you, Neil. Go ahead.
I'm in a car, so it's like a delay. Actually, my car. $800 for calipers. But anyway, yeah, she sounds like real funny because she trusts that the scientists and everybody before her, they have the answers, and there's a reason why the atmosphere, as she says, can be the way it is. And you don't need gas pressure out of containers because the atmosphere is different.
So, Neil, do you think it could be of some other reason besides that? Like she's academia, you're working with tile and flooring, and she's saying, how could he know more than me? And a little bit of ego.
No. And not to cut you off, but I never studied, but I could always debate her on anything. I used to drive her crazy.
Okay, well that tells
knows.
me why it's happening then, right there.
Well, go on. Why?
Well, because when someone who feels their academic studies outweigh people who haven't gone through academics, at least in my past, we talk to people with masters and everything else. They feel, hey, I got a master's, I got a PhD, so I'm smarter. You know, I know more than you. And I say, yeah, you may know more than me because you had a disciplined course, you paid money to get that certificate. But I'm here in the real world asking real world questions, and you don't sit above me there, do you? And they can't ever agree, say that, because I can do things they can't do, and they can do things I can't do. But I'm not jealous about what they can do that I can't do. But they are jealous because you're coming to them and saying it isn't this way, and that's what your paper you studied so hard to get said you had to agree with, and I'm telling you what you agreed with was false, and I could prove it to you. All of a sudden, you have a combative situation.
I mean, that might be true, but what Neil's actually said is not necessarily that it was rebutted with the fallacy of assumption, i.e. atmo, air, sphere. So the assumption that air just takes a sphere shape, which it doesn't, by this assertion in common vernacular of atmosphere, that rolls off the tongue no problem. And when that person's looked into what atmosphere does and not appreciated that when assuming air that fills the availability of volume it has to fill actually doesn't do that, it takes the shape of a sphere arbitrarily, then I can assert the following because I've researched what nonsense air does. I mean atmosphere does. Well, that person feels that they are it's no longer required of them to concern themselves with your assertion because they've already researched the fallacy of atmosphere and have a good understanding of it and can get on with their day, so they don't need to look into it any further. So at that stage, unless you said, well, what do you mean atmosphere? Air fills the volume of containment it has, it doesn't take the shape of a sphere. That's an oxymoron. But you're going to give me an air sphere law about how air that takes the shape of a sphere behaves? Well, that's nonsense. Air doesn't take the shape of a sphere, it takes the shape of its container. But if they haven't had that put to them in that moment, they just think, well, I defeated that person. Not because they've got a better educational background, but because they've responded with something that they perceive as being a winning argument at that stage. It isn't, but they're just like, well, atmosphere. Well, what about it?
Well,
Air
that's
isn't
true.
sphere-shaped.
That's true. That's true as well. But at the same time, if she's not even going to give Neil a chance to discuss it, you will never know that part of it. But I'm going at the root of it. Why won't she allow Neil to give that rebuttal? What's holding that openness back?
You could have given that rebuttal. Takes 15
No,
seconds.
she says she won't listen.
Did you give that rebuttal? Air isn't sphere-shaped, it takes the shape of its container. Arguing with somebody about brake pads. You there, Neil?
Calipers. Yeah, he said that if she just watched one flat Earth debate show, she'd see it. So he's having trouble getting her to the table, I think.
Yeah, I think if she gets to the table, she would pay a little more attention. But I think it's the whole thing, like, it's not making sense to her. Like, why would they have this grand scheme to...
No. Hold on. No. Hold on, Neil. When she said atmosphere, was your response, air isn't sphere-shaped, it takes the shape of its container?
You know what my response was.
Did you say that?
Correct, yeah.
You did say that?
Yeah, I broke it all down. Of course.
And what was the response thereafter?
Well, like I said, she appeals to, then she goes to NASA and all these other things, and she doesn't think that, you know, the world would be lying to her about that, or just misleading.
And further to that, second law of thermodynamics, right? That was put to her also, I assume, then.
Yeah, of course, she understands all of that. But for some reason, they think it acts different, like it doesn't apply, like, to Earth. Like, you know, it's different up there.
Unitox Femi says, my microwave's telling me that it's flat.
What's that?
Unitox Femu from the super chat says his microwave is telling him it's flat.
I gotta
Can I
check
just
what
come
mine
back to
says.
that a bit, Dave?
Hey?
On that, I was, with regard to the internal monologue, and really
Dialogue.
in terms of flat Earth.
Dialogue.
Yeah.
Mono is one.
Yeah. Sorry. It is mono with me, really. I'm not that schizophrenic. But
Why aren't you responding? Why aren't you saying anything? You should talk to me.
Talk back. I was just looking at it, and in a simplified version, and I just looked up a little political thing. Political opinion is a similar thing, because we often form these things not through great research ourselves, because I'll just quote the first sentence of the introduction. Opinions are mutable. Individuals revise their beliefs through social interaction, personal experience, and reflection. And that's the important point. Now, along with political opinion, I think if we're honest, we think about normies, the whole world. Most of their opinion is given to them through this social interaction, the experience they give, mostly through the media, so that there's those three components, and the final one being reflection. Often, with the world we live in, that concept's taken away. The definitive statement is already put there through the media, so there's no need for the reflection. So we just accept the conclusion, and I think that's the same with flat Earth. It's put there.
I think
there's little bits are put there
I
just
agree.
to reinforce, support it.
I agree with a slight expansion on what you've said, though, because reflection could be you drink a can of Coke and go, that's nice. That's reflection, right? So they've just missed out a step. The internal dialogue, the internal discussion, the contemplation stage has been immediately removed. So it's contemplation and then reflection. So you contemplate the course of action, and then once you've contemplated it and reflected upon it, it's the following stage.
But again, here it's even in this psychological paper. You see the way in which we take in and revise. Again, there's that avoidance that the concept of having a dialogue with yourself isn't there, is it? Look, it's not part of that process. It's not. yet it is for me, it is for you. Yet here within this, it's just reflecting, and that's, I think, like I say, that's a monologue, isn't it, to yourself, as opposed to a dialogue.
Ah, I see where you're going now. That makes sense. Okay,
Shut
yes.
that hound up!
That dog's probably just got a squirrel on its case.
It is. It's Phoebe. There's a squirrel in the garden. She loves squirrels, and I'll keep muting.
I could tell by the bark it's like something like a squirrel. It's not a, I need the toilet bark. It isn't.
I just couldn't hear anything but the dog.
Get out of my garden.
Godzilla says, smash the super chat. Nathan needs a new chat. I think he means chair. Indeed, I might have a solution to that. I'll come to that once this conversation dries up, Godzilla. But thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Is this that time? Has this conversation dried up, Adam?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I was twice now. I've been intrigued about the chair, and you've teased me.
Treated like a chair?
I've got a nice chair.
Yeah, don't give me chair envy. What's going on? Anyway.
70 quid from the auctions, mine, Nathan, but full leather recliner, mate. Put a cheeky bid in, wouldn't it? So it's...
Well, no, that's how I got the one next to me. The one that I sit in to watch film or listen to music, or generally the wife sits in, is something I got from, I think it was Facebook Marketplace, and it was about 30 quid. I mean, it's enormous, and managed to go in the back of my wife's TT, but a sofa broke, and I had to get a chair that fit in the space that I'm sat in, and another chair, because it was a two-seater sofa. This is a live show. Why are we talking about this?
We're doing a nice bit of psychology, isn't it?
Why
I know why.
Cheers!
It's because I use the example.
Why are we going into sophistry? Come on.
Sophistry. Boom, boom.
Very good.
Sophistry.
That's
very
perfect.
good.
No, the reason is because that was genuinely something that was going on. I thought, well, rather than give a fake example of an internal dialogue, I'll just have one that I'm previously, before the show, literally having. So that's happened to be about a chair, so that's why it's getting brought up. Anyway. So yeah, internal dialogue. Yeah, that seems to have been eviscerated from a lot of people. Many people who may have it may not realise that they're doing something that is in some way not experienceable by other people. And when you say that to them, they're probably going to be a little bit shocked that people don't do that. You know, they might reflect on things, but that's very different.
And that's the point. I think you start. Is it something that we should be encouraging? Part of it. But from looking at that, it's almost like it is ignored. It's something that's considered different and not necessarily part of your processing process.
But naturally, the process, the inner dialogue, it arrives kind of out of necessity in order to take grip on the complexities of the world and deal with it. While if you grow up immersed in the feeling and the sensation that you are being provided for, people will tell you what to do and it works out great, then you might hang on to that mechanism and in the process not develop an inner monologue, an inner dialogue properly, because you just never needed to. You never needed to do that to overcome challenges. You just had to follow the program. And then eventually you end up with no inner dialogue mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, further to that, I then looked into whether or not it might be the case that, you know, on a previous show we discussed psychosis, but internal dialogues could be considered one of the symptoms of schizophrenia. I have hearing voices, right? So I looked down that path. I'm like, well, maybe that's another way of them back engineering some mental condition to, you know, get some of the benefits out of that mental condition because they're useful to them. And if you can engineer that into society, then they've got the useful benefits that they might have. But upon looking at it, it seems that people who do actually hear internal voices that are not their own also can describe, and I found it took a long time to find this, but I didn't want to come out and say it in case I was wrong, and I am wrong if I did say it, but they still do in some instances experience an internal dialogue, i.e. a discussion about what they're going to be doing that day, or something that might be a financial concern that they're going to look at. Excuse me. And they can still do that, but also hear on top of that a not helpful voice that isn't theirs and they have no control over. So it's not like they're the third person in my example. This is something that a schizophrenic potentially could have also, on top of also having an internal dialogue. So I did find a video where a female schizophrenic literally discussed her internal dialogue alongside the voices she was also hearing. So I'm like, okay, well, if you can describe it in such a succinct manner that I can definitely perceive you do know what an internal dialogue is, and you can also distinguish that from something separate, which is your schizophrenic condition and its manifestation in terms of a fourth person, let's call it, voice, or even a fifth person, but let's not get into that. So yes, Alwyn, I think you're right. But just in case anybody else wants to go that rabbit hole, I've already spent the many hours looking into it to prove myself wrong. It's not them back engineering hearing voices delusion and trying to use it as a potential to get something out of people by way of a control mechanism. I don't think that's the case.
The dialogue's still with yourself.
Actually. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say the dialogue is still with yourself, isn't it? It's still yourself. You're not discussing with another entity, and that's the point of schizophrenia. It's almost like another personality, and it's the same personality. You're just dialoguing with yourself. Do you know what I mean? But it's with yourself.
Yeah, but it is with yourself from another perspective, though. I do a lot of inner dialoguing, and I actually address it as something else sometimes. Even though I know it's derived from me, it's just I separate myself, my conscious position from it in that moment, right? Where schizophrenia really comes in is the inability to control the inner dialogue. That's where real schizophrenia, that's when the things start to happen to you and it's like, what? It's this, it's that. Well, it's basically the loss of control over the dynamics of dealing with your inner dialogue. That's the real disease, the mental.
There's an old adage, or if that's not the right way, you'll understand it. People would say, I was talking to myself. I said, self, you should really do this for your wife because it's her birthday. So this is something everyone's heard. No one goes around saying selves with an S. You're only talking about yourself and your condition because maybe there's a date coming up you need to get ready for, and you just want to plan it right. But you're not saying selves. You're not talking to more than one person.
Well, sometimes I address myself as something else, or I have the tendency to do that because I've identified something that I, for example, morally or logically don't want to be a part of what I am, yet I have it in me. And then I separate it from myself because it doesn't adapt to where my consciousness wants me to be at, right? And then you have this tendency of separated. And guess what? This part of you is now suddenly becoming a them. It's them. They are the problem. See? It's the psychological mechanism that a lot of people apply to the outside world. It also can be applied even within yourself. And yeah, if you don't have any control over that, then things get really confusing and potentially dangerous. Well, I can guarantee you I have a very good grip on how to deal with that.
I'm going to have to go through a few of these super chats. So first of all, Godzilla smashed the super chat again to point out that I misread the first super chat, which is more hilarious if I actually have read it correctly the first time. He said, smash the super chair. Nathan needs a new chat. So that's what he actually said. So thank you very much. And also thank you for the super chat pointing out that I misread it. James Richards says, quote, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, end quote. Flat earth separates tares from the wheat. I thought it was wheat from the chaff. But nevertheless, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Indeed, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth from ballers. Unitox Femo also says, thank you very much for the super chat, James Richards, by the way. Unitox Femo says, molten iron core forgotten in vacuum of knowledge. Thank you very much for the super chat, Unitox Femo. I figured out a way I might be able to cut the expense of the show, shall we say. So one of the biggest expenses for this show is the electricity it takes to run it. Our electricity bill is bigger than some people with a mansion. And the reason I know that is because my wife works for an electricity company. And about 6 months ago, she pointed out that there was an incentive that I could offer to my audience. And I just didn't really concern myself with it because the incentive was get people to change their electricity company. They get 50 quid and we get some money off I think it might be 50 quid also, off our electricity bill. I'm like, well, I need money. So it doesn't really concern me that much. So I didn't pay it any, never mind. Now, yesterday, she put in front of my nose a few influencers that were doing this and getting free electricity. And you think, well, free electricity means I don't have to pay for it, which is an increase in the amount of money I've got. So I said to her, I think I will consider doing this and actually promoting it with a little link, especially as it's, one of those things that I can actually say, you click on this link, you might actually get 50 quid out of it, as opposed to me just begging for money, or e-begging for money, I should say. So that's something that I'm going to look into again. I've checked it once, but I will recheck that it doesn't fall under the category of a paid promotion. I'm almost certain it doesn't, because they're not actually paying me to promote them. It's an incentive link that it doesn't actually give me cash back either. Although that said, it could give the person cash back, which is why I want to double check it, because you could literally get the credit, and then if your electricity bill was in credit, you could literally withdraw 50 quid and get 50 quid in cash out of doing this, which is another reason why I think it's worth doing, because I can literally say you can get 50 quid cash, which is good, and it benefits me greatly if I don't have to pay for as much electricity, because that's a huge expense. So that's something I'm going to look into in the next couple of days. So if you hear me adding something else onto my string of e-begging intros, then you'll know why from now on. That said, it might actually benefit a few people that do it. Everyone wants 50 quid. Why wouldn't you? Anyway, that's enough of that.
The Oakley Power Company.
Oh, no,
It's a shocking claim you have there, Nathan.
Well, it's called Octopus Energy, actually, but she's been working for Octopus, yeah. So it's a recent energy company, and obviously I think they're trying to, they do all these deals and promotions because they're a new energy company and they want to encourage new customers. So one of the things they've done is say, it's actually one of those offers that anybody could do. So if you were already using them and you referred somebody, they'd give you the same thing. So it's not like I'm offering anything that special, but by the same token, if I refer somebody, I actually do benefit from it, as do they. So I think it is actually something worth looking into a little bit more detail than just sticking a link and saying it in the intro.
Multi-level marketing.
Just
No,
to
I think
be a geek, Nathan. I've recently done that and had a bit of a pain in the backside, solely because I ended up having to double switch, because I went to one that was cheaper, and they said I could only keep that tariff if I ended up having a smart meter put in, which obviously I refused. But just double check on that, because there can be RC if.
Hey, I tried that and I wound up getting 2 bills.
Well, thank you very much. That's going to really encourage my audience. I'm glad we're discussing this right at the end of the show when I've brought it up, rather than when I'm actually promoting it. Nevertheless, as much as I'm sure there are many horror stories from people changing electricity company, which are going to be unrelated to this, and I'm sure part of the grand scheme of changing your electricity provider, which isn't what this show is about. But that's why I've left it till the end of the show rather than the beginning, as this is only vague at this stage.
Well, I think if you change your electricity company, you might have a situation where it might transform your life.
Boom! A transform.
Boom, boom. Unitox Femo is giving me £2 for electricity. It's not the normal thing you can e-beg for, right? I do use an astronomical amount of electricity, but it's not the sort of thing you can say, smash the super chat, I do need to pay my electricity bill. But in this way, I can say, check out the link below. You might get 50 quid if you change your electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, which is a company my wife works for. I'm not getting paid to promote them, but by the same token, I will receive an incentive. So it's something that I have to check into in the rules and regulations of YouTube, terms of service, to make sure I'm not violating anything if I do actually receive a benefit from promoting this promotion, if that's how it's phrased.
I got 1,000. Nathan, I got 1,800 back
Say again, Sasha.
from the gas. I got 1,800 back from the last year because I prepaid everything.
Oh, cool.
I was paying 150. I was paying like £150 more every month. I didn't know. And then my wife changed the company, and we got back £1,800.
Cool. Yeah, well, I understand that. That was something that my wife had to explain to me because I was like, I don't really want to promote it if they can't actually get their hands on £50. She was like, no, you can withdraw it. I was like, oh. So literally I can say you'll get 50 quid out of it and they could actually get 50 quid. Obviously, if they're in tons of debt to the electricity company, then they're not going to get it. But nevertheless, you know, I was like, well, okay, so you could actually literally go and get 50 quid off changing the company. That would incentivize me because, you know, the reason I didn't want to promote it in the first place when she told me about it was because I'm like, you know, I just want money to be able to pay for things. You know, getting a credit, that's nice and all, but it's not worth punting in your show, right? You're going to e-beg, you might as well do it for a worthy cause. But then when you, like I say, when she showed me the other influencers doing it, not that I consider myself an influencer, but by the same token, in this instance, I'd be influencing people to change their electricity company, so I suppose I am. So there we go. Fascinating end to the show about e-begging before we encourage people to stay tuned if they're watching this on a different channel. I watched the live numbers drop while I was talking about my e-begging.
Well,
What you gotta do to make that money?
I have so many puns going through my head, I don't know where to start.
Feel free, knock them out. Got 5 minutes before
All right,
we end the live show.
So because it has to do with electricity, this was a very good line from you to generate more income.
Boom, boom.
Bing.
Bada boom.
But I kind of threw this out there to get your opinion. I mean, I kind of confess to being a total whore anyway, but adding on one extra thing to promote, is that going to put people off if it takes 15 seconds to say there's a link below if you want to get 50 quid from changing your electricity company? If that was the sentence, would it
Absolutely
matter?
not. Do what you gotta do.
What? Hey, what the heck was that? Go-kart?
It's his new car. Sounds great.
That's my call. Well, let me get started on this car. The guy had me over a barrel. He was not releasing my car until I paid him for the work.
It's usually the case.
That's how it works when you
I
take a
want to
car
at
in.
the end of the show. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, they've got a lien on your car. So when you leave a car with a garage, right, if you don't pay them, they own the car.
Yeah.
I'll explain it to you tomorrow morning.
Fair enough. I think that's probably the moment I'm going to round out the live show and ask everyone who's watching on either Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams to stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.